Recently, the price of oil has skyrocketed to the point where a lot of people complain about not being able to sustain themselves because of how expensive it is. Well, today I'm going to talk about everything you need to know about what has happened and many people's prediction on what will happen in the future. So let's start from the beginning. What happened and why is the prices of oil so high? Well, right before the war starts, which is around the end of February, the Brent crude oil, which is the main global price, sits around $60 to $70 per barrel. And once the US and Israel started attacking Iran, which is on the February 28th, Iran also started attacking ships. And that place where he attacked, they started bombing each other, that part of the sea just happens to be the Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz. Some people pronounce it differently, I guess. Depends on the accent. But the point is that part of where they're having the war at is exactly where about 20% of oil traffic goes through, So basically that narrow sea path normally carries about 20% of the world's oil. And because of that, traffic dropped by about 70%. Well, I also don't really get the math here, but I just gotta believe the statistics. So what that means is that basically the supply of oil, the traffic of supply of oil has dropped 70% and more. And that's, of course, really horrible. So some oil production in the Middle East was completely shut down. And if you know a lot about oil, you will know that most oil supplies come from the Middle East, and the Middle East have many countries known for producing a large amount of oil. So this caused a big supply scare. Brent crude hit highs around $119 per barrel, and it settled around $100 to $102 by the March 13, which is today. And WTI, which is the US price of oil, settled around $95 to $97 per barrel. So basically, prices of oil has skyrocketed 40 to 50% since the war has started, and it has only barely been about 15 days. Wait, no, 13 days. So that's exactly how bad things are going. In fact, seeing how the war is going, many people have different predictions, like I'm about to mention later, but many people have many different predictions which would change what they think of the price of oil in the future because of how long this war will last. So now moving on to what's very important, which is how it will affect the economy and how it will affect people's everyday life. Well, higher oil makes fuel and everything shipped or made with energy more expensive. Gas prices in the US has jumped to an average of $3.48 to $3.60 per gallon. So that's up about 70 to 20% quickly which is the highest in years. Filling your cars now costs about $10 to $20 more than it does before, that's horrible. I mean, $10 to $20 in US dollars, and you convert that to other currencies in other countries, when the US dollars is still strong compared to other currencies, that's really bad for not just the US but the entire world. And moving on, food prices rise because the trucks and farm uses diesel. Flights, delivery, heating bills gets higher too. Inflation goes up overall. Experts said that it can go up about 0.5 to 1% this year, which the inflation is right now about, CPI reports around 2.4%, which the Fed has just almost successfully get to a point where they're comfortable to potentially cut rates if unemployment becomes horrible. But here comes the kicker, people spend less money, people spend less on other things, which can slow the economy. And what does a slow economy do? It creates recession fears. And what does recession fears do? Two things. First, businesses pay more, so they might raise prices of things, inflation. Second, they will cut jobs, which means the unemployment rate is gonna get worse, and inflation is also gonna rise, What this means is it might be a pending stagflation. With stagflation is when recession and inflation happens at the same time. And Goldman Sachs also see about $100+ oil price staying there for quite a while, pretty soon if nothing really happens and no solutions was brought up to the table. Now, in my opinion, well, this is not a fixed opinion, don't take me on it, but it's just how I see it, is that it probably won't last forever. I mean, of course it won't last forever, but I mean it in a way where it won't last very, very long, because wars causes fast jumps, but supplies can shift, more like from the US to Saudi Arabia and etc. Why I say US is because actually US has a huge amount of oil reserve, which in the past they were forced to review that they have this when there was a shortage of oil supply as well, which is the same thing they have faced in the past, like a similar issue where supply chain has been disrupted and the US was forced to sell their oil to just maintain the economy. So that's one possible solution. And also at the same time, I feel like even though that path of C is where they usually take, people will normally adapt for the economy to keep going. So they'll probably figure something out before they run out of money. And groups like the IEA release store up oil to help, which is from America. I expect prices to peak soon, then fall to about $80 to $100 average throughout most of 2026. Maybe not most of, but partially throughout 2026. And if the disruption drags on a little bit, then it can be lower later. But a full long closure is hard to keep. So basically the history has showed us that these kind of things normally don't last too long, and people normally kind of adapt to it, finding different sources of oil as well. And this will actually kind of help the US a little bit if they're willing to share their oil reserves, because it can help their economy potentially. But these are just two ways to think about it, but there are way more out there, and I'm gonna read to you some of what other experts say. So basically the US Emergency Information Administration, this is basically the official US government group that tracks energy supplies and makes prices forecast. Basically they are in the energy department for prices and forecast. Yeah, okay, so they say that Brent crude, the main worldwide oil price, will stay over and up and above $95 per barrel for the next 2 months, and after that it will drop below $80 per barrel during the third quarter of 2026, which is from July to September, and after that it will reach about $70 by the end of the year. For the whole year of 2026, they suspect an average oil price of $79 per barrel, which is a big jump from their old forecast before the war started. They predicted it will fall further to $64 per barrel in 2027 if the situation improves and oil flows return to normal. Well, that's only one. The second expert, which is Goldman Sachs, a major bank known for giving detailed price predictions to investors, raised their forecast for the last 3 months of 2026 to $71 per barrel. For Brent, which is, like I said, is the worldwide oil price, they used to say it would be $66, but they are assuming the disruption will last longer than most people think it will last. So around 21 days of very low oil flow, and they expect a very slow recovery. What this means is basically they think that sea is still going to be blocked for over 21 days from now, and also they expect a really slow recovery, which we have typically seen in the economy before when we were facing crisis where these kind of people, they do not take action too fast or immediately for some reason, but they expect a slow recovery basically. And they also want They also warned that if the Strait of Hormuz, which is the sea, stays blocked throughout the entire March, prices could climb even higher than record peaks in 2008, which the peak in 2008 was when oil prices went over $140 per barrel. And $140 back in 2008 actually means more than it does now, technically. But to people that earn minimum wage, it feels worse or the same. But back in the days, the US dollars was actually much stronger, so it actually was really, really high for $140 back in 2008. Now, that's the second prediction. And now the third prediction is that they have different ideas. Many of their normal, most likely predictions that they say is that they still expect price to settle down around $60 to $70 per barrel in the long term if the war stays limited and does not spread. Basically, they don't spread it to other countries. They keep it within Iran and Israel and US. Then that would be the possible outcome. But if it goes over, the fears of World War III potentially, then that would be a completely different story, right? And the bulls, which are normally the experts that expect the price to keep rising a lot, is that they warn the prices could average a $91 or more by the late 2026 in the worst case scenario. But for the bears, which is the opposite to the bulls, where they expect the prices to go down, they believe that we could go to about $55 to $65 per barrel if extra oil supplies from other countries return fast, which, like I said, from Saudi Arabia or the USA. Well, both are pretty, I wouldn't say unlikely, but I would say that the middle is probably more accurate, probably. And I hope the war doesn't spread as well. So that's what I think. This is the predictions of everyone else. Well, don't take what I say accountable though. I'm just guessing. I'm playing a guessing game myself, and you believe what you believe. We're just joining this. You're just joining me on my learning journey. And comment down below what you think though. I'm really interested in know what other people's predictions are, because there are so many predictions out there talking about so many different things, and they all have slightly different predictions that could be significant due to the timeline and so on. So comment down below if you have your own thoughts. But the bottom line is that the war has blocked the key oil path, so prices has exploded and hit wallets with hard and higher gas stuff. But most of it eases as supply adjusts or conflict winds down. Well, if you want to truly know how the oil is going to recover, the first few things to look out for is the oil path, the strait, Strait. I don't know how to pronounce it. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sorry. The strait. But look out for news in there. If they're still blocked, then that will mean that it will last longer. And depending on how long the war will last, that's why every word that Trump say would probably affect one of the investors move on some companies or whatever stock they're buying, because what Trump say, like when he say that the war is gonna be very short, but when other people say that the war is gonna last longer, these are the times where people will form different opinions. Well, you gotta keep up with the news yourself. But I hope you enjoy watching this video. That's all from me, because I'll keep you updated as I continue to learn about all these topics as well. I hope you join me on my journey, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.